Ted, you've done so much, science, engineering, entrepreneur. If you were to go to a career day, what would you tell the kids in the classroom about what it is you do?
I have no idea what I'd tell them. I don't know. So I don't have a very nicely put together presentation, I might add, from David. And I'm a little bit out of my element here because I'm not an educator, and I don't think I have like some amazing message about education to share or convey. But I was willing, and I am passionate about education, so I said, okay, I'll be here. So I'll have to apologize in advance if I don't have any really well prepared or pithy ideas about it. So what would I tell? What was the question about? What would I tell
you're
the
in career day,
right,
and you've been invited in to talk to the kids about what it is you do. Get them excited about what you do. What would you say to them?
I honestly don't even know how to describe what I do. People say, "What do you do?" And well, I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm a business owner. Sometimes I'll use that one if it's a government thing and I have to sign for my driver's license, business owner, or I'm a founder of a company, or a technologist or scientist. I am trained as a scientist. I practice technology. So, I don't know. I think I roll it all together and say I'm a creator. I'm a creative person. And I've always taken the path of in my career and what I do, where can I be the most creative? What things can I do? What can I find to do that's creative? And I think that's probably how I'd boil it down.
Well, part of this session is to take you back, and if you can imagine, you are no longer entrepreneur engineer, but you are 5 years old, and you tell your parents, okay, this is what I want to be when I grow up.
Right. Well, when I was 5, I wanted to be a mad scientist. That was my mad scientist.
There's some, okay.
Yeah, got some notes here. So I had no idea where I was going at that time, but I knew I had an interest in science and math and things like that. I wasn't a math geek, but I was always creating things. I was making things. I had some of my earliest memories. I remember she's like grade school. I was really young. The librarian would come down the hallway and pull me out of class when the typewriters broke, because I had this ability just to go into the library, and there's these old, good old typewriters, that actually had mechanism. I'm not that young. I may look a little bit young, but I'm not that young. And I just had this ability to get them to work again. I'm really good with my hands. I just somehow had this sense of being able to zero in, isolate and zero in on the mechanical problem in a machine and get it fixed quickly. So that was great. That was very sort of supportive for me. My parents were I'm a product of a broken home. My parents divorced. I was the youngest of 4, and my other 3 siblings were all up and out in college. And right around that time when I was the last in the nest, my parents were going through this divorce. So it wasn't a particularly supportive and nurturing period of life for me. I was kind of on my own. And being, I think, the youngest kid, you get left kind of to your own devices. As long as you're not drinking the Clorox from underneath the sink, you're okay. And so the combination of being the youngest and the divorce, it was really great for me to get asked to go fix the typewriter. It was like, wow, I can do something well. They value it, and I was really proud of being able to do that. So that was an early experience that shaped me.
So you talk about being left alone, and right now we have a lot of programming in schools, after-school activities, lots of technology. Did you have alone time? Was that part of your creative process? Did you find ways to entertain yourself?
Yeah. Although, man, I watched way too much TV. I remember my sister and I would come home from school, and my mom was off working, and we would just watch TV all afternoon, which is sad but true. And it was junk TV too, and it was all the commercials and everything. And, I don't know. It should have damaged me irreparably for the rest of my life, the amount of hours of crappy TV that I watched, but somehow I got over it. Maybe I could have been even more successful if I had not watched that much TV. Like 3 hours a day.
Was there a TV show that influenced you?
No, it was just junk. It was like, what's on, click, We didn't even have a clicker, so it was like turn it on and just, zone out.
So if you think about what you asked Santa for back then, what were like the toys and things that were on your wish list?
I was a boy. It was usually like gear and stuff, like little cars and airplanes. I was really into remote control airplanes. I actually would scavenge parts whenever a thing, electronic or mechanical thing broke and was going to get thrown away out of our household. I'd grab it and I'd take it all apart into its constituent pieces and save them in this sort of box. I call it my box of parts. And I'd then concoct new things out of it. I'd find I had this one little metal fire truck that was just passive, on axles, and I motorized it and fly across the floor and hit my mother in the ankles, and that was the end of that. But so those were the sorts of things I like to play with, and I was always play. I designed a tic-tac-toe game out of electronics. It never worked because actually there weren't, I didn't have integrated circuits, so I was trying to wire it so it would always indicate when somebody had won, and that's actually impossible with just wires and conductor, So that was a failure, but I worked,
Well, let's talk about failures, because so much is about getting the A, and it seems like you had a few of those along the way.
No, I was a solid B- student through all the way through high school. I barely got into Columbia. I was reasonably motivated and reasonably smart, but I wasn't an aspirational student at all. I was not turned on by my classes particularly. Some of them, yes, and I did have some teachers who were the key, I think. It only took one or two in my young years to give me enough inspiration to get me through. And it was only, even going to college, I remember I crammed for the biology the entire semester at Columbia in 2 nights and got a B on the exam. I didn't even go to class, really. I kind of attended classes, but I didn't do much else. I just wasn't into it. And learning biology from a textbook, being crammed down very, very passively, I just wasn't inspired by it. And it was only in my junior and senior years in college, finally, that I got to design things and use these core skills that I'd been sort of forced to learn. You have to learn mathematics and, all the way up through ordinary differential equations, and you have to learn physics, although I did like physics a lot, and you have to learn chemistry, and you have to have a piece of biology. Those, yes, there's value in all those, but I just wasn't synthesizing them. And I really believe more in synthesis than analysis. I'm not an analyst, I'm a synthesizer. And now that I finally, in junior and senior years in college, I took mechanical engineering and I had that capstone senior design project. Finally, I could use these things and synthesize something and create. And from that's when I started to really excel.
So as a designer and a scientist, you have an opportunity to redesign the 21st century classroom. Mm-hmm. And you think back to these experiences that weren't so inspiring. Mm-hmm. What would be your message to educators, just from your own personal perspective of, had I to go through that program or class, I would have done this differently?
Right, so I have a few key words actually around that. I think, and I don't think I have any great epiphanies that you haven't heard before, but I'll probably just reinforce them. I think that experiential learning is huge. I think synthesis-based learning is much more exciting to me than analysis-based, although you have to have analytical skills. I think the idea of project-based courses or classes, project and team-based, it's not all about the core content, but increasingly in our world, I think that teamwork and collaboration are crucial, and solving real problems as a context for education is great. It's hugely motivating, and I think you can still get all those fundamentals kind of through the back door. My education was very traditional. Columbia was very traditional. My high school, it was like you're gonna eat and digest what's in this book, and it was just of course that's a way to get the fundamentals. But since I've taken courses in my PhD and that were just flipped completely, where we're going to design a new bicycle as a team. We're going to divide the class into teams of 5 students each, and you're going to design a bicycle, and you're going to, at the end of the semester, on this date, there's going to be a competition to see who has the fastest bicycle. And you're going to make them all out of paper. You can't use any metal. Go for it. And that was an awesome course. I loved it. And we ended up studying a lot of the fundamentals about materials properties and physics and locomotion and the stuff you need to get the fundamentals, but it was in this context of a really awesome, fun project that, I guess I have a competitive streak because I wanted to win, and, the teamwork, there was a lot of dynamics. We had blow-ups and fights. We had great collaborative moments, and, that upper layer was so much more fun for me, and it motivated me to learn all those fundamentals. So I think that's a message I would have. I think at the end of the day, also problem solving is huge. I think, and I see it a lot with younger people today in school and young, Y generation. A lot of my staff are younger. Having a chance to go solve an important problem motivates everybody, motivates me. And if you can help somebody or solve a problem for society, that just trumps everything now. It's, going out and make $1 million, yeah, that's nice, but can I, solve a huge problem for society? I think that's big. And you can do that in the classroom. It doesn't have to be curing cancer. You can do something small, I think, in a day.
In addition to the courses, what would be, as you think back to you said there were a couple of teachers who inspired you. What would be the message to teachers about the connection and the communication with students?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm qualified for that. I mean, I liked some of the thoughts about, I do believe that each student has their own situation, and that's why I love, a small classroom. My 5-year-old benefited from being in a classroom in pre-K last year with only 8 students. And I mean, I could just tell the difference in the bandwidth that our teacher was able to have with our kid, 1/8 of the time versus 1/16 or 1/20 of the time. So, I see that there's just value having the bandwidth at the time. And obviously each person is going to have their own place that they're at. And I'm sure that's one of the biggest challenges of teaching, and also in the workplace. I try to do that with my employees now. I'm not a teacher, I'm an employer. And I have a team of about 12 people that I manage every day, and I try to think about where they're at today. I thought that was on Monday we're going to be talking about the progress we're making a little bit more because
not as fast, or
well, I just hadn't realized that as much. I suppose that's part of what inspires me and my team to do what we do is to innovate and to make progress towards that innovation.
Great. Now, you are experienced as a parent. So tell me, what are some of the fundamentals that you try to use with your own family in raising a child who will reach their fullest potential and have a creative household?
I encourage my 14-month-old is really too young to get into that, I think. Although I do I'm a believer, let him walk around and fall and hurt himself within reason. I think a bump and a scrape here and there is good. My wife doesn't agree. She's more protective. So I keep an eye on the gate that would fall down the stairs and the stove, and other little smaller and the electric outlet, but other things around for my 14-month-old to walk around. It's okay. Climb up on a chair and fall off. There's carpet. It's okay. It's not going to be that bad. I'm a believer in that. So that's at that age. And then my 5-year-old, I really, if he finds a dead bird on the ground, I'm going to say, let's boil that sucker up. Because, and sure, any idea that he comes at me with, I'm like, let's do that. And he's like, let's build a skyscraper tomorrow. I'm like, well, let's think about that. What do we need to start with? What are we going to use for materials? I don't say, you can't build a skyscraper tomorrow. I'll let him figure that out, on his own if that's where we're going to go. But I'll just be sure, okay, let's think about what it's going to take to do that.
And as we close out, if you think about classroom environments and even your own team environment, what kind of environment would you say would be, if you had a magic genie to say, this is what a classroom looks like?
At what age level?
There you go. Let's go for 10. Age 10.
Well, I did look at schools for my 5-year-old. Last year was our entry year, into the school system, and as that was the first time for us, we, took that journey of investigating all the local schools and whatnot. And I have to admit that the Montessori model, where there's a lot of cool stuff lying around, I like that. Although I was very impressed by the Quincy School here, which is a public school, also just great, open environment, open floor plan, with just all kinds of cool stuff lying around. It was all geared at the right height for the age group of kids. Walking in, being 6'1", you're like, everything in this whole room is only 3 feet tall. But then you realize, well, that's because it's designed for the height of the people using it. So I like an environment that's open and creative. For the older group, I remember at Stanford, I took some of these great capstone courses in design, and the best spaces, and I see these in architecture schools too, are the kind of the big open space where everybody has a bit of a studio desk area, and and there's just stuff everywhere. At Stanford in the product design group, you go in there and they deliberately leave behind lots of artifacts from previous projects. So there's stuff hanging from the ceiling, and it's just, you walk in, it just feels very creative. Open, collaborative areas for your own work, and then lots of open collaborative work. And we actually just redesigned our space because we expanded. So we left the majority of it being an open space where we just have some tables and sofas, and then crammed in the back corner are like desks in a line, just to minimize the space over there, because we felt, you can be at your desk, but we do a lot of collaborative work, so why not have cool areas to hang out, work on the sofa for a few hours during the day.
So Ted, everyone wants to know, are they out there? You were the science officer and editor for UFO Hunters. Can you tell the group that's watching, do they exist?
Now, I can tell you, but then I have to kill you. No, actually, my line is, now, if I told you that there weren't any, then, but the government wouldn't let me say that, there were. So, but if I tell you there are, I forget how the line goes, but if I practiced it, I hadn't, I can't tell you the truth. But that whole show, I stumbled into. I was finishing up at MIT. I was getting my company started. I was getting ready to leave a perfectly well-paying job, start a company, kind of a crazy idea, doing mosaics with robots. And I got an email from History Channel. They were looking for a PhD scientist from MIT who could fly and scuba dive. And I happened to fit the bill. And they, I don't know exactly how they triangulated on all that. And at first, I just junked it. I was like, this is one of these, silly things. And something about it made me, it was a little bit too well crafted. And then actually the next day, I took it out of my spam box and was just like, maybe I'll just look into it for giggles. And I have a cousin who's at NBC, so I forwarded it to him, saying, is this legit? And he wrote back, he's like, yeah, I know the production company, they do great work, you should do this. A lot of people would give their left arm for the opportunity. And I was like, wow, okay, why not? And so I did the TV show for 2 seasons to support my startup company, because I had no income. So I had a small TV career for a while. And it was bizarre, because I was actually on screen, I was a host. And the second season, I was also the producer, science producer. And I've never acted in my life. I don't know how to act, and I'd be terrified to try to act. But it was a reality documentary. So they said, just get in front of the camera, be yourself, and be a scientist, and talk about the case. So that's what I did for, I think, something like 26 episodes. And I definitely did not find, alien bodies or spaceships made out of unobtainium. That, to me, I'm a physical kind of scientist guy, so I'm like, I need physical proof. Never found that, so I'm not convinced. But I found a huge amount of circumstantial and credible evidence that there are aliens that come to this, fly to Earth. It's not enough to believe it, but it starts to make you think twice about it, because you talk with police officers and rocket scientists and space shuttle astronauts and government officials. Although I'm not sure that's credible there, but airline pilots with 15,000 hours of commercial airline experience who are gray-haired, senior, and these aren't wacko quacks on the side. These are like legitimate people who have no reason to make this stuff up, and yet you're sitting there talking with them, and they're describing. I was on Space Shuttle Mission 24 orbiting the Earth, and I looked out the window, and an alien vehicle flew up next and hovered. Flew around the vehicle, we did some maneuvers, it followed us, and then it flew off again. And you're like, okay, all right, yeah. But this is a really legitimate person. And I had thought the UFO thing was more of a fringe kind of thing. So that does leave me kind of wondering about the whole thing. And then aside from that, there's the fascination of that the whole UFO phenomena, turns out, is an amazing social science. I mean, like 1 in 4 people in America, and not just America, around the world, either think they've seen a UFO or have like a close family member, a close family member who have. A lot of people think about this. It's not a tiny minority of people on the fringe. It's pretty predominant throughout society. So that made me more interested in it. And then lastly, the whole TV production industry is something to observe on its own right. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty crazy how they produce TV.
Ted, thank you for not only sharing with us the kind of your pathway, but opening us up to the future of possibilities. They're out there, and we're going to raise creative kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.